needed. I learned that professionals were people who were just following orders from people whose only goal is to make a buck. It is true they might have gone to school for a few extra years and learned different vocabulary, but they were not my baby's mum. They couldn't make wise decisions for him. Time has strengthened my resolve. The older and more professional I get, the less I respect professionalism as the voice of knowledge and understanding. Now, no matter what the issue, before I submitted, I would learn everything I could possibly know for the sake of my children's health and my family's well-being. The door was open, I started to learn. It's like horrible story that a baby died, but typical anti-vax nonsense here.
So, learning for yourself, getting information, getting educated, getting details and data is a bad thing? Yes, that's a problem with Joe Rogan.
Sorry for the couple who lost their child, but there's no vaccines had anything to do, no proof that vaccines had anything to do with it.
Well, you can do autopsy, look at the chemical contents of the vaccine and their bodies and their immune reaction, and look at the result, then put it in the body, how the immune. And under the same logic, there's a lot of COVID deaths, and on the statistics have no evidence they were COVID. They weren't even tested negative. I'll leave links to that. Those two cases and probably other cases.
Trust someone like Debbie Pearl to be open. Nothing in the story actually says to me like definitive proof vaccines killed this child. Very, very hard to believe. I just feel like this whole story.
Okay, you gotta look at the details. I'm not saying it was like a regular flu shot or the typical anti-vaxxers or anti-vaccine in general. It would be better if it was the COVID would be better if it was the actual spike protein. Just talking about the methods of getting information, the way they think. It's not.
The door's open.
Let's be a disclaimer, YouTube, about me and disinformation. It's more my way of thinking, not the information.
Really lead to more children. The fact that she's described
What are the rare cases
as
from traditional?
just a few extra years where you learn a different vocabulary worries me a lot, because she claims she's learned a lot and knows how to care for her babies, but nothing she has written here demonstrates that she has any immunology or even just basic.
Nothing you right here, neither.
And I'm just going to throw this out there because I always get these comments when I even mention like immunology or vaccines or anything. I always get the same comments. Last time I spoke about this, and it was in the context of Joe Rogan and his misinformation, and someone said to me like, and what education do you have on this topic that Joe Rogan doesn't? And I was like, a lot. Despite what a lot of people online seem to think, I do not have a degree in literature. I actually started out studying biomedical science at Warwick, which is one of the best universities in the world. I ended up changing to a different, more varied science degree purely because I didn't want to go on to do postgraduate medicine. I decided that wasn't the career path I wanted to go down, so I changed, but I still did that 1 year of biomedical science. And for people who don't know, UK unis are very, very different to American ones. Our courses aren't generally all that varied unless we can do external modules and choose them to be. So when I say I studied biomedical science, I mean like a full year of nothing but biomedical science. That said, when I changed my degree and I did my BSc in business management, I actually did external modules in neuroscience and psychology and sociology and philosophy and ethics and economics. But when I did biomed, it was just purely biomed, just biology modules and chemistry modules, and that was it for a full year. So my core modules included like a really, really intense big 24-cap module on proteins, genes and genetics, agents of infectious disease. One of my optional modules was one called Health in the Community. So basically all of these covered topics like immunology and vaccines and public health and, you know, the basics of genetics and human biology, like in great detail. It was pretty intense. So while I'm not going to claim I'm an expert in the topic at all, I'm not a vaccines expert, I'm not a doctor myself, but I have been educated on this stuff to a high level at one of the best universities in the world, and I do know more than your average person, and I do know more than the likes of Joe Rogan and Debbie Pearl, so, you know, it's worth mentioning. And while we're on the topic of misinformation, and this whole section makes me angry. Okay, did you know that down in the Amazon there is a tree frog that has horribly toxic poison on its back? The poison does not appear anywhere else in nature except in the gut of schizophrenics. People with multiple personalities. First up, that's not what schizophrenia is at all. Schizophrenia is a mental health condition which can cause hallucinations or delusions or confusion amongst other symptoms, but it can absolutely be managed by, living a healthy lifestyle and medication and therapy, and it does not at all cause multiple personalities. That is completely wrong. She then says, this poison is not found in the gut of healthy people. Is it found in the gut of any other diseased individual? Thanks to a mum and dad who were desperate to find help for their autistic son, we now know that the same toxin is in the gut of autistic kids. Second bit of misinformation here. Neither schizophrenia nor autism are diseases. People can be perfectly healthy.
So she went to medical school that she doesn't understand medical terminology. Yeah, if it's genetic, then it's called genetic disease. Chemical imbalances are called diseases.
Think, once an unknown disease, autism is now destroying the lives of 1 in every 100 children. Misinformation number 3. Autism does not destroy lives.
That's a matter of opinion.
What can you do to avoid the chances of your child developing autism? Hell out with me. And then she goes on a long rant about how right now you need to learn to do things like learning to cook with beans and fresh vegetables so you can make sure you have a healthy baby and not a diseased autistic baby, because now is the time.
There might be
to
many
learn to have
factors if
healthy
it's brain
babies
damage
and what
or
to do if
anything.
your child has subject to.
Also, she's been to medical school, yet she has no concept of how of microbiome and its effect on the mind. Again, she claims to know more than the average person, yet has no concept of the microbiome in psychology.
Just allowing him a place to speak, but they're actively hoisting him up and making sure we listen, which is a huge problem when he's clearly spreading so much harmful misinformation. And the fact that Spotify are, I guess, what would you say, maybe like approving of this? They're
Allowing
giving
him
him an air of authenticity. They're saying, yeah, this is someone you should listen to.
because of data results.
That's a problem. But compared to something like Mouse in this situation, like some people, regardless of their age, regardless of their background, regardless of anything, do not have the level of critical thinking skills required to consume media like Joe Rogan's podcast and not be put in direct harm by it.
People like that who don't have critical thinking skills go to professionals, sources, or at a time when it's never easy to look at information directly. They already talk about the sources, who says what. Those who do have critical thinking skills and want to think critically go to Joe Rogan. Stop projecting.
Shame the people who don't have those skills.
Because you don't have those skills.
The point is doubting all these like government conspiracies and stuff and how they're not going to get vaccinated.
Evidence.
Blah, 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 because Joe Rogan says whatever. The level of...
What he says, what he shows, what he can verify. And he has other people who said that, who have evidence that can verify that. He has results and data. Or actually, you have other people who have results and data. And you trust Fauci and all of his disinformation.
I do think that's a problem. But comparing to something like...
If you don't have critical thinking skills, then you listen who says what on sources, do what this person says, do what Fauci says.
In this situation, like, we also have...
People go to Joe Rogan to get the other side of the information, the full story.
Very different for someone like Joe Rogan.
Alternative to what they get forced down their throat.
Most of his audience are adults, and people say...
If you control how these books affect, that's called propaganda.
Whose responsibility is it to define what a dangerous book is? It's complicated,
How you
right?
define misinformation?
And there's totally different levels to this. Like here, there's uproar about kids seeing some speak, but they're actively hoisting him up and making sure we listen.
No, they're not.
Which is a huge problem when he's clearly spreading so much harmful misinformation. Like he's literally being fact-checked on air and still refusing.
The fact checks are being misinformation. Facebook in court admitted their fact checks are opinion. If the fact checks are being proven wrong, the fact checking the fact checkers. Look at a lot of results on COVID. In fact, one of the fact checking on Joe Rogan, CNN put a green filter to make him look sicker. Then the fact checks denied that CNN put a green filter on there when you can clearly see a green filter.
To admit he's wrong and change his narrative. And
he did admit he was wrong, even though he was right. He said, COVID patients have worse cases of heart inflammation than people from the vaccine. But that actually turned out not to be true. All the examples of actually collapsing were, I'll get sensitive, I get it. But the examples of actually collapsing are actually having strokes. Or actually, he said the fact check was you have 8% more higher chance of getting heart inflammation from COVID than from the vaccine. Didn't go on the severity though. So you want to fact take this off for disinformation? No, I'll correct it. You're 18% more likely to have heart inflammation from COVID, but I'm not talk about the severity. And anyone who says censorship is supporting Fauci is anti-science, anti-scientific process. They're saying results, debate, and data and results are anti-science. These are the cultists who lack critical thinking skills, always about sources and who says what.